Hello and welcome to my review of the Adeptus Custodes Shield Captain for Warhammer 40,000 from Games Workshop. Now, one of these miniatures will cost you £26 and consists of 21 plastic components. Now, this is an important miniature for Games Workshop because they've never really had a standalone single Custodes Shield Captain before. Forge World have, and it was a finely detailed resin miniature, so much detail, it's absolutely fantastic. And I reviewed that Shield Captain back in March of 2018, so that review is now 6 years old. But that miniature was £30, so only £4 more than this current plastic one. And I prefer that one, definitely. I prefer the resin one. For those 6 years, Games Workshop have been advertising that you can build your own Shield Captain using a Custodes from one of the two box sets, either the Wardens or the Custodian Guard. And you can, and people have, and there's nothing really to set them apart. This model brings, well, three things really to set it apart from your typical Shield Captains. But although it brings those three things, it loses in a way that many new miniatures brought out by them lose something, and that is in posability and weapon options. Strange times that we live in where an Orc Big Mech has more options than an Imperial miniature. That Big Mech has 2 range weapon options, it has 2 melee weapon options, and it has 2 different heads. This Shield Captain only has 2 different heads, you know, helmeted or helmetless. But before I babble on, I'll just tell you that the format of this review is as usual. So we'll have a look at the Shield Captain up close. I'll go through how easy it was to build him. We'll look at that spare part, just the helmetless head. Then I'll go through some size comparisons with a load of Adeptus Custodes and Horus Heresy miniatures. And then at the end, I'll go through all of the rules, which cannot be found in the previous edition's codex. This one, you won't find this particular Shield Captain's rules in that book. So if you want the new rules, typically you're going to have to pick up that new codex, and codexes now are £37. They're knocking on the door of 40 quid for a book that's going to be refreshed every 3 years that only has 1 new miniature in. You can see why I fervently wish all of the rules to be free and digital only as soon as possible. Because if you've got 20 armies, it's going to save you £700 every 3 years. So let's have a look at this Shield Captain up close. Very quick to build him in the live stream. I had a fair bit of fun. Everything went together quite well, quite quickly, didn't have any issues. The only thing that I would be mindful about if you're building yours is this join here. There is a bit of an ugly join with the kind of cloak and this shoulder pauldron pin or whatever it is. So I would try and close that as hard as you can, use some Tamiya, wait until that's bone dry and then file it to get rid of it. But everything else went together quite well. Even the pyrothite spear with the melter gun barrel being drilled out went together well. The pose is a bit odd. I just don't like this main thing at all. It does look very Votan, and I think the images, the photo that they've used, this particular one where they're kind of looking up at the Custodes and his head isn't really facing the spear, doesn't do it justice. I think that's what puts people off this model. But actually, he's not that wide. He's not that chunky, and with him, you know, his head pointing at along the spear looks all right. I mean, I prefer the Big Mech, of course, but definitely better than like taking a photo of him that way with his head facing this way. It does make him look wider than he is. But no, he's perfectly in proportion and sized compared to the rest of the Custodes. He does have a fair amount of detail on that scenic base. He's got a lovely bit of masonry column there and some rebar sticking out. There's even a little skull and skulls and things. There's some detail all over his armour, and you know, different detail than we've seen from Custodes before. The shield is very nice, although I do prefer like the square shields, you know, of the actual Custodian Guard. But there we go. So that's the shield captain. Let me just show you the spare head. So the helmetless head is a bit odd, I'd say. He's bald, he's got an anguished face. I don't think their paint scheme does him justice, having him like really bleached white with bloodshot eyes or whatever they've kind of painted him as. But yeah, that's his face if you wanted to go for that. And that's it for the spare part, so let's go straight into the size comparisons. Okay, let's start off with the Blade Champion, which was kind of the last new release for Custodes. Not a big fan of this model, but just to give you an idea where he stands up next to the Blade Champion. He is, I'd say, a little bit taller, but that's mainly because he's on that scenic base. All intents and purposes, they're very, very sort of similar height-wise, on the same size bases, of course. Compared to the older Shield Captain from Forge World, right here, this one didn't have a helmet version. He is a little bit taller, just a little bit, but again, because of that scenic base, and this Shield Captain, or it's Ixian Hail, I think it was, he is coming down some stairs, so that gives you an idea where he sort of stands. Same size base though. Compared to a normal Custodian Guard, again, it's hard to judge, but a little bit taller maybe. Height wise, if we take the scenic base off, he's going to be the same size. Chest plate is the same size. Spear is a bit longer, and obviously is dual edged and has the firing on the side, you know, for the Pyrothite Spear. Compared to Valerian, similar sort of size. I just feel like Valerian's got more detail on him, but I could be completely wrong. The greaves look different as well. I wanted to show you the difference between the Pyrothite Spear and the Pyrothite Spear, basically. Hopefully you can see that. But size-wise, again, this new Pyrothite Spear on the Shield Captain is longer, but you can see that the Forge World Pyrothite Spear has the firing mechanism down the length of the blade, whereas the Games Workshop one just has it off to one side, and I think it looks way cooler this way rather than just off to one side. It looks better that it's in line with the spear, because you think, you know, this could pierce something, and then if he wanted to, he could then fire off the melter, whereas this one, if he pierces something, he's going to fire it off, but he's going to create that superheated molten hole off to one side of the wound. Maybe that's more damaging, I don't know, maybe it's an afterthought, but I just prefer the Pyrothite Spear on the Forge World model. Just because I can, I'll give you some size comparisons with other larger Custodes. So we've got a Terminator here, one of these Aquilin Terminators, absolutely huge bad boys on the 50mm bases. Then we've got Constantin Valdor, why not? Just gives you an idea. Is the Pyrothite Spear longer than the Apollyon? A little bit, maybe a little bit. But yeah, that gives you an idea of where sort of they stand. Valdor is bigger, but yeah, the Bling Master, as I call him. And then we've got a Custodes Contemptor, and then we've got a Telemon Dreadnought, Give you an idea of just how big the Telemon Dreadnought is. It's the biggest Dreadnought. And then why not, let's just bring in a golden Land Raider, Custodes Land Raider. Final size comparisons, of course, just with some other 40k minis. So we've got Primaris, Space Marine, and then Sly Marbo. A Space Marine is, yeah, dwarfed by the Custodes, and then a Primaris is just a little bit shorter, and that's in line with the lore. I think the Primaris are about 8 foot, and I think the Custodes are 8'5", maybe 9. So yeah, Custodes are normally a little bit taller than the new Space Marines, and Sly Marbo is, yeah, probably barely up to the torso of the Custodes. So I hope those size comparisons have helped. Okay, so this is my part of the review where I will go through all of the rules for the Adeptus Custodes Shield Captain. You'll find them in your brand new Custodes Codex, and the points cost of the Shield Captain is 140 points. And the model is equipped with a Guardian Spear. The stat line of the Shield Captain: it's movement of 6 inches, toughness of 6, save of 2+ with a 4+ invulnerable save, 6 wounds, leadership 6+, and an objective control 2. Now, it has a number of ranged weapons and melee weapons, but pretty much the model's Guardian Spear can be replaced with one of the following: a Castellan Axe, a Sentinel Blade, and 1 Presidium Shield, or a Pyrothite Spear and 1 Presidium Shield. So no mention about any Adrathic spears. So the typical Guardian Spear has a range profile and a melee profile. The Guardian Spear is, the ranged profile is a range of 24 inches, it's assault, it's 2 attacks, ballistic skill 2+, strength 4, AP -1, damage 2. It's pretty standard. Melee wise for that Guardian Spear, it's 7 attacks, weapon skill 2+, strength 7, AP -2, damage 2. If you go for a Castellan Axe, again it has a range profile which is 24 inches, assault 2, ballistic skill 2+, strength 4, AP -1, damage 2. So it's the same range profile as the Guardian Spear. The melee profile for it has 1 less attack, it's got 6 attacks, its weapon skill is still 2+, strength bumps up to 9 though, AP drops to -1, damage of 3. So it does the most damage and it's got the highest strength, but it has the worst AP. The Sentinel Blade has 2 profiles. The range profile is an assault pistol, range 12 inches, 2 attacks, ballistic skill 2+, strength 4, AP -1, damage 2. So the weakest out of all the ranged profiles. Melee wise, it has 7 attacks, weapon skill 2+, strength 6, AP -2, damage 1. So it also has the least strength out of all of them. But it kind of makes up the fact that you can have a Presidium Shield. The Pyrothite Spear then, ranged weaponry. Again, it's quite short range. It's a Melter 2 weapon, a range of 12 inches, 1 attack, ballistic skill 2+, strength of 9, AP -4, damage D6. Pretty good for the strength and the AP, but it loses out on the number of shots. Melee wise, it has exactly the same profile as the Guardian Spear, which is 7 attacks, weapon skill 2+, strength 7, AP -2, and damage 2. Now the Presidium Shield, you add 1 to the bearer's wounds characteristic, which is... I would have preferred to add 1 to save and roll throws for the invulnerable save. Maybe not the normal save, because, you know, it's already at 2+, but to give it an invulnerable save of 3+ maybe. For the shield, I would have preferred that than 1 extra wound, because I don't think the trade-off is there. I'd rather have a spear than a Sentinel Blade and shield, you know, but in this case you can have both. You can have the spear and the shield, which is probably why it's quite strong. Abilities, the core abilities, Deep Strike and Leader. Faction abilities, Martial, Qatar. Another ability, Master of Stances. Once per battle, when this model's unit is selected to fight, it can use this ability. If it does, until that fight is resolved, both Qatar stances are active for that unit instead of only 1. Strategic Mastery, once per battle round, you can select one model from your army with this ability. That model's unit can be targeted with a stratagem for 0 command points, even if that stratagem has already targeted another unit from your army this phase. The model's a leader, so it can be attached to the following units: Custodian Guard and Custodian Wardens. Keywords: Infantry, Character, Imperium, Shield Captain. So there you go, that's my review of the Shield Captain. It's not the best looking model, I don't think. I think the plume at the back makes it look odd. I think the images that they've shot for it, again, makes it look odd. Like, if you squint slightly, you can see it's like a Leagues of Votan model. I much prefer the older Forge World resin Shield Captain for like £4 more with the axe. And also, don't forget that you can still make your own Shield Captain with a Guardian Spear or a Sentinel Blade and Presidium Shield. There's still that option. You don't necessarily have to buy this one. And you know, the way that Games Workshop have sculpted this spear itself, I'm sure you can find like a melter pistol, an Inferno pistol, or a melter gun, and just, you know, kit bash it and sort of glue it on the side of the spear, because that's kind of what they've done with this one. The whole beauty about the Forge World Pyrothite spears were that the melter gun barrel was integrated into the spear. This one just looks like it's been, well, you literally glue it onto the side, so nothing's stopping you from doing that as well. What do you guys think of the model and the rules? Please do put your thoughts and opinions down below. It'd be good to hear from you. Thank you for watching. The Emperor Protects.